Interviews with business owners and veteran executives who share their wisdom and expertise to help you de-stress, free up time, and make more money. Prophets of IT.
Welcome back to the Prophets of IT. I'm Jim Punzenberger, your host. I am also the creator of the Managed Prospecting System. The Managed Prospecting System allows you to generate leads and appointments without cold calling or ad spend. For more information, check out managedprospectingsystem.com. Today, I have Jonathan with me as a guest. Jonathan, why don't you introduce yourself and your company and tell us a little bit more about yourself and your company, please.
Sure. Well, first, Jim, thanks for having me on board today's call. It's always a pleasure to interview with somebody who's focused in IT and IT services. And frankly, that's where I got my start. My name is Jonathan Goetsch. I'm actually the founder of CEO of US ProTech and a software development company that's about 6 years old called Anama. It's a continuous diagnostics and mitigation platform. So my history is pretty simple. In 1999, I lost a multi-million-dollar contract because we couldn't answer successfully how our service would impact the computer security of their network. And we knew immediately that this was going to be a question that would keep coming up over and over again in the future. And here we are in the future, right, today, where there is no IT conversation that's even taking place, whether it's in the boardroom or just in the war room. That doesn't include cybersecurity.
Right.
I mean, it's to get from, losing business to winning business and winning large, it didn't happen overnight, right? And there was a lot of time where companies still wanted to push back on an IT spend that included cybersecurity. What have you found, Jim? I mean, you've been talking to people. Are people interested in cybersecurity?
Yes, I've found that cybersecurity is a very hot topic right now, especially with the high-profile ransoms that have been in the news lately. There's been a number of them, and so that it's really brought to the limelight the importance of cybersecurity, and also educating more people on that there is really a need for it, and which then would require a budget for it also. So I do see that cybersecurity is a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, it certainly is. So what I thought we could do today is maybe talk about 4 specific areas that people might want to consider when they're looking at what their plan is, right? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? What are good solutions? What are best practices? What are maybe some of the pitfalls, right? As we get ready to launch that part of the conversation, I just want to say again, thank you for having me on board. The one thing that I've realized in cybersecurity is there's just no silver bullet. There's lots of products. And that's probably one of the problems is without any, roadmap to success, many companies are left in the dark. So the number one thing that I believe companies need to do is select a framework, right? There's lots of different frameworks that businesses have adopted over the years. We've heard of things like ISO, or COBIT, or, so on and so forth, right? There's lots of different ones. But more recently, people have started to adopt a framework called NIST, or the National Institute for Standards Technology. Now it's oddly one of the oldest departments in the United States government. It dates back to 1902. So for some people to think NIST is new to me, just so you know, it's not new to America. It's been around literally 120 years. So again, one of the oldest departments you've never heard about. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to establish what is the right communication format between, let's say, government departments with government departments, or maybe government departments with defense contractors, or how about defense contractors with subcontractors, and how do we maintain a roadmap that would be successful? And just recently, NIST has morphed even again. It's called the CMMC program. And it's really basically a cybersecurity maturity model that has about 130 questions associated to it. And these 130 questions are frankly 110 questions that have always been part of the NIST 800-171 framework. And then they had this kind of secret side to the government, and it's called 800-53. And they basically took 20 of those special controls and applied it to the controlled unclassified information group. And now we have the new CMMC program. So, yeah, so selecting a framework is essential. No matter who is going to listen to this show, make sure that they're hearing this, because without a framework, you've got no roadmap to success. That's the first thing. So the second thing I thought I'd bring up is about all the products. You know, you have a lot of products that are in the play, and everybody wants to be the best of the best, and it's the newest and it's the greatest. And we can look to companies that are big and great. They've become big and great through acquisition. There's no telling how big Dell will ever get, right? Or how big HP will ever get.
Or Microsoft.
Microsoft, right? Of course, but occasionally that rush to grow leads to rapid acquisition of tools that aren't properly integrated, which is something why we saw, you know, the big problem with SolarWinds last year. And of course, they've changed their name back to Enable, and that's a whole different story that we're not going to get into. But I will tell you that there are tools that are out there that are still good that are produced by SolarWinds, right? The fact that they were using products to, how should I say, automatically update systems without having a human involved in that process, probably a little bit of a shortcoming. And that's why there are professional service companies and executives and professionals in the industry, because a lot of things need to be checked by humans. There's a human intelligence that we want to achieve through artificial intelligence, but you got to be very careful about the products that you mix and you match. So a little bit about the products that we focus in on are products that solve two particular problems. One is governance, risk, and compliance. That's one of our applications that we've written for the defense, let's call it the industrial defense complex. Any subcontractor within the DoD or the aerospace and defense industry probably need to know, and they are aware of governance, risk, and compliance. So the four components that are important there are, did you get an assessment, right? You know, what are the 110 or 130 questions? And can you prove that you're actually doing those right things? If I'm talking to somebody that's not in the Department of Defense or not a subcontractor in the aerospace and defense industry, don't get put off, because whether you're in banking, any kind of financial, medical, we could say petrochemical, a variety of different vertical markets that have embraced the NIST framework, right? They all have to do the same thing, but you also need to get insurance for cybersecurity today, right? And in order to prove your eligibility for cybersecurity, you have to be able to prove that you have systems in place to meet the minimum criteria for that insurance to be in full force and effect. So I really encourage people to take the time to know what their plan is, check the boxes so they can show that they have the controls in place. Otherwise, their business is in peril. You could have cybersecurity insurance, and when you get to court, you'll find out that you failed to do one small item, and that whole policy is null and void. So a governance, risk, and compliance application, like the one that we have, and there are others, can guarantee you that you have absolutely checked the boxes and that your insurance is in full force and effect. So that's one thing. And the second is probably my favorite topic of all. Did you know that the United States government spent over $1 billion on one cybersecurity program? Jim, have you heard of continuous diagnostics and mitigation?
I haven't.
It's amazing that the United States government could spend over $1 billion on a single contract, and nobody and hardly anybody knows about it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a fact. So about 6 years ago, that contract was developed, and it's actually been added to over time. But continuous diagnostics and mitigation is a program, a cybersecurity program, derived by the Department of Homeland Security. And the most interesting thing is we all know who Booz Allen is. It's a big firm, and out of all the contracts that Booz Allen's ever won, the CDM contract is the second largest contract in the history of the firm. That's how big of a contract it is. And for no one to know about it, that's kind of a shame. So we took on the task of writing the first commercial version of a continuous diagnostics and mitigation software for the commercial industry. So our CDM product is called Anamo, and Anamo has been knocking down the doors across the country. In fact, just in recent years, we've been invited to speak at the White House during a private briefing. We've been involved with invitations to the Pentagon, have been able to work with the steering committees of some of the United States Armed Forces. Aerospace and defense is a key area of growth for our company and the subcontractors that support them. So between that umbrella, and of course you have to kind of go through that GSA thing, and you allocate SINs and blah, blah, blah. But the larger market, believe it or not, is the private market. So we've created a version of the application for banking, for any kind of financial institution, as I mentioned, healthcare, any kind of industry and manufacturing. And now what they can do for the very first time with this CDM application are probably 3 key things I'd like to tell you about. So the first thing is, have you ever seen an application that could put Linux, Windows, right, and Mac, and show you all of the vulnerability across all 3 operating systems, and do that on one screen? See, we've done that. Not only can we look at those 3 operating systems, but we can look at what's vulnerable in the device, what the package vulnerabilities are, and we can look all the way down into the kernel in 3 separate sections across an entire enterprise, a division, a small group, or even an individual system. And we can cross-correlate that of a variety of ways.
Yeah.
So there's those 3 different operating systems. That's fine. But it can also, in the same UI and on the same page, show you workstations, servers, data center, and cloud all together at the same time. So now executives don't have to ask, what is my security? What is my risk? What is my cybersecurity risk posture? So they can get that answer on one page.
Got a question for you, Jonathan. If I'm an MSP, is this something that I could use in my business to help for my customers?
Great question. MSPs, I'm going to break it into two places. We talked about GRC and the governance, risk, and compliance component. That is absolutely something that is not a multi-tenant type of application, because it deals with very confidential and secret information. It's not something you can share a common login to because of the rules surrounding that. However, Anamo, the CDM software, absolutely is built for multi-tenancy. What that really means is that you can have your ability to deploy your agents, and at the same time, you can then set customers up as, let's say, groups or divisions, and you can even have subdivisions. So your customer could have multiple divisions, and you could have multiple instances of that those groups within the application itself. So the answer is yes.
Cool. And so is that something that I could utilize to, so basically I can utilize it to prove that my clients are meeting the standards to bit of cybersecurity insurance. And
good. Yeah. It's part of that. Let me go one step further, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about that insurance piece in addition to the MSP piece. So far we've talked about vulnerabilities in what we call the attack surface management aspect of cybersecurity, which is it vulnerable? How do we know that it's vulnerable? You know, like we're looking at software, packages, and kernels as the attack vector. And that's an important thing for us to consider. And there are applications that are out there today that do a fair job at this. They just don't know how to bring it to a dashboard and deliver the information in near real time. And when I say near real time, Jim, I mean, like we have about 120-second refresh rate. So faster than you can pull a KB from Microsoft, patch let's say a server, our dashboard automatically updates from 10 vulnerabilities to 9, and you never have ever had to scan. You never had to schedule a scan. You never had to run a report. It's continuous, right? Continuous diagnostics and mitigation. We can get into the mitigation pieces as well. But the attack surface management component is just one feature set of an AMO. The second part of the application brings in most of the capabilities found within the SIEM market. So security incident event management, right? There are competitors in this area that charge millions of dollars for their solution. And they become very noisy, and they really don't do the customer a service. If you make too much noise, it kind of becomes like a baby that's crying in the corner of the room, slightly ignored. And while that might not sound very appealing, it's in fact what's actually happening. So on one hand, you have attack surface management, so all the software vulnerability from workstation to cloud, everything down to the kernel. And then you have users, groups, ports, permissions, and the ability to collect at a forensic level the data associated to any type of adversarial insider threat movement. That data is captured at a forensic level, sufficiently so that it can be used by the FBI or any other jurisdiction for prosecutorial purposes. So this is a very big nut to crack. If you start thinking about really like ports, what are ports? Ports are, of course, how we move data, right, through a port. But software is usually designed for open and close. So anytime a port opens or closes, you would identify that in there, whether you're a Cisco or a Palo Alto or any other OS for that matter that's monitoring ports. But where they all fail and they haven't come up with a solution yet is what happens when the port is just modified? See, there's no alarm or a trigger for port modification until an AMO. We actually can capture a port modification. So if a user becomes a group, that would be something that would be of interest to administrators. And that can happen through the entire file tree. So octal permissions into systems, file folders, the file tree. Anytime you access a document, if you're an adversary, you may be in the environment, but if you're not doing anything, you're not doing anything. You're not a threat. But when you start to make moves, these are objectively tracked. So if Jim, you were to add yourself to, let's say, my domain, well, there's a timestamp for that, right? And so ANAMO actually captures all that at a forensic level. So that's a concept of when we talk about products, there's a lot of products out there to be considered. You should be looking for products that are near real time, as close to real time as possible. The Department of Homeland Security is looking for identification to validation to presentation in 72 hours. We do that in 120 seconds. So that's one of our super strengths, I guess you would call it, right? So there's products, right? We talked a little bit about insurance. We talked a little bit about product, and I really wanted to kind of kick it back to you because really there's so much more to unpack here. But if your listeners might want to know about more, I'm going to give you the opportunity to guide the conversation as well.
Sure. So we only have a few minutes left here, but essentially, I guess my thought is as an IT business owner or executive, how essentially how does this benefit me?
Sure.
Is the question, and then if I guess after you answer that, if I want to get a hold of you, second question would be how do we get a hold of you, and what would be the first step in evaluating this?
Sure. Well, to your point, we're short on time, so maybe it is best to leave some of the curiosity for the listener for later. But to specifically address your question about what's the benefit, I've been in too many boardrooms where CEOs and other executives were unable to answer the question, what is my cybersecurity risk posture right now? What if general counsel was in that same boardroom and that needed that answer because of an insurance issue? See, today, the process of getting that answer is lengthy due to limitations of staff skills, limitations to software, and so on and so forth. And even if you could pick up the phone and say, scan now or scan for tomorrow, you'd end up with a report that's old as soon as you printed it. So what is the benefit? An executive could open up the user interface of an AMO and instantly have a dashboard that shows numerically across the board what all of their systems look like, how many vulnerabilities, they're all tallied between critical and high and medium and low and across all the different operating systems and workstations and so on and so forth. And as it has a 120-second refresh rate, you can know that that information is up to date. And we cross-correlate across a minimum of 3 different resources for all of our vulnerability information, including the National Vulnerability Database and others. So it's very, very accurate information. What's the benefit? They can also drill in within 2 or 3 clicks to see how let's say the organization has been improved, or it hasn't been, who's improving, what's improving. And they can do that with just just a few clicks. And at the same time, from executive manager all the way down to the sysadmin, they have a tool that functionally is faster than they can work, and it's reporting to them their work in real time, which they can then communicate back to management. They can show them, hey, we worked on 50 vulnerabilities today, and we accomplished 40 of those, or we finished 60 of them. You can numerically address what it is that the IT department is doing downstairs, because that's one of the problems that nobody talks about. Upstairs is wondering what IT is doing. Anama allows you the ability to report numerically on what it is that's been accomplished. Just another benefit.
Got
so
it.
So Jim, as we get ready to wrap up, let me just thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you.
It's better just to tell people exactly what you're thinking. But if they would like to get in touch with our company, US ProTech is based in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's over 20 years old. It can be reached at area code 949-629-3900. And of course, through email, right? At any email address that's available on the website. The website is www.usprotech.com. That's USPROTECH.com. Really appreciate the time.
USProtech.com is the best way to find out more about you guys.
Yeah, call, email, web, we have all of that. So, but the last thing I will tell you is that for your viewers, not only can they come to contact our company, but they can get a free trial of either the GRC software or sign up for a proof of value with the Anama software. And that, I think, is a real value, because we don't really, obviously software has its costs, but we want to make sure that your viewers have a benefit. So we've made basically a proof of value and a trial available for your listeners.
So they just contact you and say that they're a viewer of Profits of IT to receive the trial?
Yep, absolutely. That's all they got to say.
Great.
And we'd like that because we want to acknowledge, obviously they're listening to the program. We want to acknowledge you for hosting and promoting the program. And we're here to support the community. We think that we can do that by bringing better tools. And these tools, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to definitely want to see. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And until next time on the Prophets of IT, I'm Jim Punzenberger. And if you're looking to generate leads and appointments without cold calling or ad spend, check out managedprospectingsystem.com. And bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Prophets of IT. Please smash that like button, subscribe, and share.